So, if you didn't know, today the 2.3 mega update patch notes dropped, and this has been probably the biggest update for Rocket Arena so far. I'm gonna go over what they changed about characters. So first we got Amphora. First thing they did was her uncharged and charged shot now fire at the same speed and have the same radius. So pretty much the only thing that charging is going to do is increase damage. They removed her ability to pick up the rocket ball and treasure chest with her hydro form ability for her uncharged shot, and got quite a bit of changes. For uncharged shot, there were a few changes: reduced impulse from 1500 to 1100, increased fire rate from 0.5 seconds to 0.425 seconds. Fully charged, the damage was reduced from 40 to 35, that's huge, and reduced impulse from 2800 to 2000. Next up we have Blastbeard. The charged anger has been changed and now requires the player to hold a secondary input until fully charged and then release it to fire. This will allow us to better handle the ability being interrupted by his primary or special. His rocket cannonball, his primary, increased speed from 11,000 to 12,000, increased arc damage from 4,000 to 5,000. And Boone, they did say, was in pretty good shape, so there are only a very small changes to Boone. His rocket jump was increased from 500 to 700. As I said, we see that a lot. Increased controller force feedback, which reduced controller sensitivity, and here's his only basically buff was using Zix's vortex, which is where he shoots the wind funnel out of him. That will now reset his ability to hover when you scope in. Next up we got Izelle. Her primary firing speed was increased, and the collision radius will increase, so that will be easier to hit people with Izelle's primary. Rocket jump radius was increased. The Jaqua charge special has reduced distance when it is used to pick up rocket ball or treasure chest. Next up we got Flux. Flux had some interesting and very needed changes. The biggest one was she cannot use Black Hole Cat when she's in the Fluxverse. And if she is using Black Hole Cat and activates the Fluxverse, she will cancel the Black Hole Cat. So this is, you can no longer go into Fluxverse, start charging your bomb, and then exit and throw it. Increased rocket jump radius, obviously, and reduced the Black Hole Cat's maximum scale by 25%, which is huge. Next we got Jato. His Skypiercer rocket's primary increased collision radius, but only by a very small amount. Reduced the impulse. His thruster suit increases the triple Skypiercer rocket speed from 16,500 to 17,000. Although they also reduced the impulse from 2,750 to 1,750. So they took a whole 1,000 impulse off of his triple Skypiercer rockets. That is a nerf if I've ever seen one. Next up we got Kai, which is probably the most confusing nerf buff of them all. We can't even tell. Basically, they removed the scaling on her primary. So speed and gravity are the same on her uncharged and charged. So they basically did the same thing with Amphora also. Her projectile, this is huge. Her projectile speed is now a constant 1600. That is previously from 12,000 to 2,000, or 12,000 to 20,000, based on how much you charged it. Now it's a constant 16,000. Projectile gravity is now a constant 1.5. Increased collision radius from 130 to 140. which is horrifying, to be completely honest, because now it's going to be even easier for Kai to hit shots, which in my opinion was not needed. Next up we got Leaf, which was easily the least messed with character. All that was changed about Leaf is now his charged beam can go through Mistine's mirror shields. And next up we got Mistine, which I was expecting quite a bit of changes. They decreased the speed of her primaries and increased her rocket jump radius. And for her Phantasm, it will no longer display game mode specific overhead UI, which I'm guessing means Phantasm will no longer show that she has the treasure chest or rocket ball. Next up we got Plink, my main. I'm so happy with what they did with Plink because I feel like that was a very, very good change. I was expecting something with the teleporter. We did not get it, but that is alright. We got something with his primary. Increased homing distance from 3,500 to 4,000, which is going to be so helpful. Even just that small amount, that's going to be very, very helpful. We increased boomerang rocket jump radius from 256 to 650, which is a huge change that is going to be very nice. And Plinks will be able to get around the map faster, which was needed for such a fast-paced character. Rev was also a large change. They basically lowered the spread of her primary and basically made it easier to hit all of her abilities and her primary. For primary, increased collision radius from 100 to 120 and reduced horizontal spread from 0.65 to 0.2. So this will be the bullets will now fire closer to the reticle. Next up we got Top Notch, which got a interesting rework. There were some quality of life changes for his primary Bouncing Betty. The speed was increased from 15,000 to 16,000 for his primary, and increased minimal hold time on controller for manual detonation. Increased rocket jump radius, obviously. So here we go on to his main abilities. Zephyr Strike, reduced AoE explosion radius from 2,750 to 2,400, which is nice. And you might be able to avoid it without a dodge now. We'll have to wait and see. And his artillery salute now refuels his jetpack fuel, which is huge because they nerfed his jetpack a little bit. They made gravity affect it more and there's less fuel. But now his artillery salute will refill it. And that is all for the heroes changes. We will see how it all turns out. We'll be able to speculate, but we won't know until tomorrow on how this will actually affect the game.